Every night, the screaming started. A high-pitched, desperate wail that clawed at the walls of my sanity. It was my daughter's cry, a sound I knew better than my own heartbeat. It would begin just as darkness settled, a relentless torrent of grief that no amount of comfort could quell. I'd rush to her room, my own heart pounding in my chest, but the room was always empty, just a cold, silent space where she used to be. The sound, however, was everywhere. It filled the house, echoed in my skull, a phantom limb of sound that refused to fade. I tried everything. I played her favorite lullabies. I whispered stories into the empty air. I even redecorated her room, hoping a change might somehow break the cycle. But nothing worked. The crying persisted, a nightly ritual of my own personal torment. Friends and family offered their condolences, their platitudes, their well-meaning but useless advice. "It's just grief," they'd say. "You're hearing things. It'll pass." But they didn't understand. This wasn't just in my head. It was real. As real as the cold sweat that drenched my sheets each night. One night, it was worse than ever before. The sobs were so violent, so filled with a pain that felt ancient and bottomless, I couldn't bear it. It felt like she was right beside me, her tiny, spectral hands clutching at my shirt, begging for something I couldn't give. In that moment, a desperate, irrational thought seized me. I had to go to her. I had to make it stop. I grabbed my car keys, my hand shaking so badly I could barely fit the key into the ignition. The clock on the dashboard glowed with an accusatory red. 3 a.m., the witching hour. The drive to the cemetery was a blur. The world outside my windshield was a smear of streetlights and shadows. The road stretching out before me like a dark ribbon into nothingness. The only sound was the phantom crying in my ears and the frantic thumping of my own heart. The gates of the cemetery were closed, of course, but a low section of the stone wall was easy enough to climb. My dress shoes slipped on the damp grass as I stumbled through the rows of silent, sleeping stones, each one a monument to a story that had ended. Finally, I found it. Her small, polished headstone, gleaming faintly in the moonlight. "Our beloved angel," it read. I fell to my knees in the cold, damp earth, the chill seeping through my trousers. The phantom crying seemed to intensify here, as if the very air around her grave was vibrating with her sorrow. "Please," I choked out, tears streaming down my face, mingling with the dew on the grass. "Please, stop crying, baby. Daddy can't take it anymore. Please, just be at peace." I pressed my forehead against the cold stone, my shoulders shaking with sobs. "I love you so much, but I can't do this anymore. Please stop." For a long moment, there was nothing. The wind whispered through the ancient trees, a soft, mournful sigh. The phantom crying in my head seemed to recede, fading until it was just a faint echo. A fragile sense of peace settled over me. Maybe this was it. Maybe she had heard me. Maybe she just needed me to come here, to tell her it was okay to rest. A sliver of hope, the first I'd felt in months, began to bloom in my chest. I stayed there for what felt like hours, kneeling in the silence, until the first hint of dawn began to paint the eastern sky in shades of gray and purple. Slowly, stiffly, I got back to my feet. The world felt different, quieter. The crushing weight on my chest had lifted, replaced by a strange lightness. I drove home as the sun began to rise, feeling a cautious optimism. I had faced the impossible, and maybe, just maybe, I had won. I parked the car in the driveway, took a deep breath, and walked to the front door. The house was silent. Blissfully, beautifully silent. I stepped inside, my shoes silent on the hardwood floor. I walked past her room, the door slightly ajar, and there was nothing. No crying, no screaming, just peace. I went to the kitchen and made myself a cup of coffee, my hands steady for the first time in what felt like an eternity. I sat at the table, watching the sun stream through the window, feeling the warmth on my face. It was over. It was finally over. I allowed myself a small, tired smile. Perhaps now, I could finally start to heal. I could remember her smile, her laugh, not just the sound of her tears. I'd finished my coffee and decided to get some real sleep, the kind that wasn't haunted by ghosts. I walked back down the hall, feeling lighter with every step. As I passed her room again, I glanced inside. The morning light filled the space, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. Everything was just as I had left it. The small bed, the bookshelf filled with her favorite stories, the rocking horse in the corner, and then I saw it. On the floor, in the very center of the room, was a small, muddy footprint. My blood ran cold. It was tiny, the size of a child's shoe, and it hadn't been there before. And then I heard it. It wasn't that distant, echoing sound anymore. This time it was different. It was very close, intimate, a soft, gurgling sob, followed by a quiet sniffle. It was coming from inside the room, from the closet. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of pure terror. I stood frozen in the hallway, my entire body rigid. The sobbing grew louder, clearer. It was the sound of a child who had been crying for a very, very long time, and had only just now been heard. Slowly, ever so slowly, the closet door began to creak open, and from the darkness within, a small voice whispered, "Daddy, I'm scared."